Her name is Leah Teigman. I always tell people it was my grandmother died on the first day I ever went on a date.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You scared her so much?
I didn't even know. I came back from the date and it was a whole story. I mean, they buried her. Those days, people didn't have phones or anything else. She died on Shabbos. They buried her an hour after Shabbos, and no one knew. No one. They didn't tell us. They couldn't get in touch with us. That was something that happened. Okay, I'm going to try to continue today. Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to move in a second. Yeah, I'm going to move. Just 1 second because I have to press this button. There we go. Okay. I'm just make sure my phone's off. Okay. I'm going to try to continue a little bit what we started last week. I'm not sure if it'll be only continuing, maybe also starting something a bit new. But those who were here last week, might remember that we spoke about this idea of adding new days to the Jewish calendar, and I said the reason I chose this topic is because this month is a month where we have all the Jewish holidays that we ever thought of adding. It happens to be this month. From we said Yom HaShoah till Yom Yerushalayim. In between we said Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, and of course Lag BaOmer. Meaning, don't think it's only that our agenda here is only Zionist additional days, but know that even Lag BaOmer happens to fall within these days, and I'll try to throw out some ideas and connect them all together. So last week we spoke about the difficulties that were raised in the religious community specifically regarding having dedicating a day for the Holocaust. We said that this is a long kind of problem that the Jewish community had of adding Bichlal new day, and that was one issue that we'll soon see again will come up again with Yom HaAtzmaut and other Chagim. But if we want to look at the Shoah itself, there is a special problem that the Jewish community had, the religious community had, when you're trying to as if highlight one event rather than include it in the Tisha B'Av day of mourning, which historically used to include all tragedy to the Jewish community. That was the argument of Rav Soloveitchik and the Chazon Ish and others that really saw Tisha B'Av as the day which we have to mourn everything. And the proof is that for the Chmielnicki massacre, for the Crusades, additional kinot were added to Tisha B'Av, and not necessarily were they given their own days, even though we said last week it's not 100%, because there was an attempt in Jewish history to make Kaf Sivan into a day to remember the Chmielnicki massacres. And I don't know enough, and I would be interested if someone would do a little bit of research about this. At what point did it exactly stop? I have a theory, maybe I'm wrong, that this is one of the things that the Holocaust changed. It could be that before the Holocaust, you could find communities keeping Kaf Sivan more, but I think after the Shoah, like many customs that were kept, may have been totally forgotten. So that was we said. Those were two main arguments against making Yom HaShoah into Yom HaShoah. We then said that again, I guess against these opinions of the rabbis, the Jewish community here in Israel, at least the secular and the religious Zionist community, all have taken upon ourselves to keep Yom HaShoah and to make it into an official day of commemoration and memory. We spoke about last week how this is a very Jewish idea. There are many ideas that we debate amongst ourselves. Are they Chokot HaGoyim or they Jewish? Regarding standing up for a siren. So as you know, and some people say you're not allowed to. It's Chokot HaGoyim, and then there are people that say, "What are you talking about? This idea of standing to stand as a sign of respect? That's an old Jewish idea, right? The idea of standing up and show respect is an old Jewish idea. And then you could talk about having a siren go off, like a shofar. You can, right? There are a lot of there are a lot of there are a lot of customs that may look very not Jewish, but you could argue that they all stem from us, from our tradition too. And the same will be for Zikaron and meaning the idea of Zikaron, the very powerful Jewish idea, and therefore maybe in the subconscious we said of the Jewish community we established this Yom HaShoah, and then lastly I argued last week that it's not a coincidence. That's what I wanted to really argue last week. And this is something that you can argue with because I can't prove it to you because it's something that I'm just suggesting that in the subconscious of the Jewish people there was this idea. I'm trying to move around so I can the pillar. People can see me, but I think we need a shimshon here to take these pillars down. But for a second, I think that what I tried to argue last week was that the idea that Yom HaShoah was established a week before Yom HaAtzmaut, that wasn't planned originally, but the way it happened and the way we see it today as an introduction as if, or leading as if to Yom HaAtzmaut, I think gives a lot of meaning, not maybe even for today, but rather for next generations who won't have that awareness of the Holocaust in their minds, more appreciate Yom HaAtzmaut. That's really what we said last week. Bakasha.
That wasn't here last week, but for Yom HaShoah, part of it is to give kavod to the survivors. It's possible that 50 years after the last survivor, that Yom HaShoah may, lose its importance and may go away.
Right. I agree that that's always going to be a problem. Yeah. I really wonder what will be in 20, 30, 40 years from now with Yom HaShoah. Who knows? That was one element that we spoke about. Now I want to go back a second because I want to speak a little bit about Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron, Daled B'Iyar, I mentioned last week, I'll just now go, it became Memorial Day for Israeli soldiers, and recently it also became the day of commemoration for victims of terror. By the way, they just announced now that they killed the terrorists that killed the D family.
Oh, really?
They just got all of them just now. In Shechem, they just finished them off. Okay, so can you do Kol Yedecha Hashem? So the Dal B'Yar became the day of commemoration. When was this planned? I think that's what I don't remember what exactly I said last week. Maybe I'll repeat this idea and continue from here. When was this planned? That Dal B'Yar? Because I think this I mentioned last week. Many Israelis find it very hard to move from Dal B'Yar to Hey B'Yar. It's almost masochism what we do to ourselves. We cry, we hop, and then we're gonna how we switch so quickly. How did that done? I think again I'm sorry. I spoke to Shabbat somewhere for like 6 times somewhere else. So I don't remember what I said last week here or their Shabbat. My mother lit the Masuah on Yom HaAtzmaut in 1981. Did you know that? My mother was chosen today. It's a very big thing. Then it was a bit of a less big thing. But she lit Masuah in hers in 1981, and we went the whole family. My father always used to say this was the only event in his lifetime that he went for my mother to something. Anyway, and we went to have you ever been to the ceremony at Har Herzl? I mean, you've probably seen it on television, right? So it's like very powerful that they begin with like the tragedy, the sadness, and then suddenly, as if we're machines, they turn you off and they turn you on again to have fireworks. I like, what are we, machines? We can shift moods from one to the other so quickly. Yeah. Oh, yes, so I said, I think I said last week. If I didn't, so I said it again. Purim is a precedent. I spoke about last week, I think, right? About Tanit Esther. I spoke about it, right? Tanit Esther and Yom HaAtzmaut are the same idea. That Tanit Esther we said didn't happen then, and okay, we spoke about it last week. Excellent. How that kind of because we said Yom HaAtzmaut may not really start on Hey B'Yar, as if it starts more on Dal B'Yar. We said to appreciate Yom HaAtzmaut, you really have to go through Yom HaZikaron. Yeah. But when did Yom HaZikaron? Anyone know when Yom HaZikaron was actually established as Yom HaZikaron?
I just heard that they couldn't decide on the date, and Rabbi Gorin said Erev Yom HaAtzmaut, we have to set a date.
That is partially correct. Apparently, what I read, and that might not be correct, what I read was that already in 1940, Dal B'Yar became a day of commemoration for the Jews that were killed in the Pra'ot of Taf Reish Tzadik Vav, 1936. Meaning Dal B'Yar before there was a state, was already somehow connected to a day of memory. And then it was added, obviously, the idea that Gush Etzion fell on Dal Biyar, added to that becoming Yom HaZikaron. At the beginning, by the way, in the beginning, they wanted to make Yom HaZikaron a day only to commemorate the Gush Etzion people. There was a suggestion called Yom Etzion. That was a suggestion. And then they decided, and that's where Rav Goren comes in and really says that it was never intended to be the day before Yom HaAtzmaut. It was intended to be near Yom HaAtzmaut, and it developed and became what it is. So again, you see, just like Yom HaShoah, there was no real plan that it would be like that. But I said before, I'm saying it's a dramatic, maybe an emotional kind of thought, and you can't prove it right or wrong, that the subconscious of our people realize that this is the right way to do it, because this is the classic kind of model that exists in Jewish tradition. The idea of days that come together, like the 3 weeks, like the Shemei Tshuva, like Sfirat HaOmer, Pesach and Shavuot, meaning this idea of creating days that somehow come together as a unit is a very old Jewish idea. The idea of mixing Evel and Yom Tov is a very Jewish idea. So I think that's really where it comes from.
The framework.
Yes, nachon. And of course, this leads us to Yom HaAtzmaut. Yom HaAtzmaut was established, as we know, on Hey B'Iyar. Now, for the religious community, as you all know, I'm not saying anything new, this created a very big question. How should we react to this day of independence from a religious perspective? The Israeli government, I don't think it was so difficult for them to realize, Hey B'Iyar is an important day. It was a day Ben-Gurion declared independence, and the country saw that day as the day of Independence Day, and it translates in a secular government into a day of Shabbaton, which no one goes to work. You get double pay if you do go to work. It's a national day. There are ceremonies, national ceremonies, but the religious community was facing here a very big question, and still facing the question: how do we respond to this secular day in a religious perspective? And as you know, this till today is not clear. Some people say, if I would probably go around this room right now, and I assume that many people in this room are pretty similar in many ways in their hashkafa, we'll probably find that we do different things even here in Yom HaAtzmaut. If I were to, you don't have to raise your hand, but if I were to ask who says Hallel with a bracha and who says Hallel without a bracha, probably find different opinions right now. If I were to ask who says Hallel at night, which is, by the way, a new thing in my lifetime. When I was a kid, no one said Hallel at night. No one did. Sorry? I mean, I'm saying Yom HaAtzmaut, I'm talking about. Even Pesach, by the way. In Pesach, in Chutz La'aretz, who said here in Chutz La'aretz Pesach, Hallel Yom HaAtzmaut? No, you did. My father was marked, but I think most people don't say in Chutz La'aretz, right?
It's optional.
After Alein, when people left,
Yeah,
right. It's like Tefillah and Chol Hamoed, it's like it's a focus, right? But here, so look in this room, where again, we all seem to be very similar. Ashkafa, we all believe in this state of Israel and Zion, Yom HaAtzmaut, right? And yet we still haven't gotten together when it comes to having one minhag and one, unlike Hanukkah, where we all do the same thing. Yom HaAtzmaut is still, and that's fine, by the way. I don't think we should be excited about it. It's fine. It's normal for a country, for a nation, to take time to adapt to adopt. And I think, by the way, that since I was a kid until today, many things have become much more simple in the Tefillah Yom HaAtzmaut. When I was a kid, it wasn't so simple. It wasn't so clear at all. Today, things are more clear than they were, and it develops. So first of all, let's have something more basic. Before,
by the way, your question about different stuff, you didn't say how many people don't say Hallel. See, all you're talking about are the details.
because I'm saying in this room,
No, that's what I'm saying.
I don't want, I'm lamed zchut, that everyone in this room says Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut in some way. Right, if I'm assuming that if I would give a share to a different crowd, then my assumption would be correct. Maybe I'm wrong, but obviously, I think it's obvious what I'm saying, that there are many firm Jews that don't say Hallel Yom Ha'atzmaut, and there are many firm Jews that say Tefillin Yom Ha'atzmaut, and there are some even that see it as a terrible day, right?
That's politics.
It could be, but no matter what the reason is, that's how they respond in that day.
Yeah, but it's politics because we say, thank God, with all kinds of things. To make a big deal of thanking the Rebbeinu Shalom is just confrontation for no purpose.
Right. So here's the thing that I want to talk about, because there's one thing about being positive towards Yom Ha'atzmaut and treating it with like Phil just said now, and thank Baruch Hu. But the question here, from a religious perspective, is: can you actually call it a Yom Tov? Give it real religious status? Meaning, can you decide, in our case, that it's in the middle of the Sfirat HaOmer and we mourn Rabbi Kiva's student's death? So you can say that we can shave, we can take haircuts, we can get married. Can you get married on Yom Ha'atzmaut? Shaving is Rosh Hashanah thought that you can shave every day of the Sfirat HaOmer, and you all know that Rav Lichtenstein used to shave every Friday, but also in the time of Rav Soloveitchik's shir, I think that he wanted the guy to shave every day, and I think it was a story that I'm being taken. I have to be careful. I think it was a story that Rav Shechter used to shave only before shir. It's not to Omer. You know that.
I don't remember.
You don't remember. I think I heard it from my father. And people would say, "Oh, that's how the minhag became that. You're supposed to shave every Tuesday because they saw him shave every Tuesday."
What time?
Well, exactly right. So shaving is not a big thing, but haircuts, we're not taking haircuts. If you take a haircut on Yom Ha'atzmaut, can you get married in Yom Ha'atzmaut?
Music.
Hallel, music. I think music is a little bit less of a problem. I between you and me, I never understood why people are getting so excited about music. But okay, but here the question that really came up, besides Hallel, which is a question of itself with a bracha, the question of Kviat Yom Tov became a halacha question. Can you actually add a Yom Tov? So you can say, what does that really mean? Are those just words? What do you add Yom Tov? Like, are we doing a mindset? We're actually like, what are we doing? That would be halacha. That would be a halachic problem. So here, if you look at your sheet, you'll see that in the middle of the sheet, I brought the pasuk of Lo Tosifu Adavar Shomachim Etzevetchem Lo Tumeno, a very famous Lo Ta'aseh, the Torah. You're not allowed to add to the mitzvot. So you can say to me, okay, don't get so excited. All we're doing is saying a bit of Hallel and dancing Hora. I mean, come on. So the truth is that the Ramban, which you have on the next page, the Ramban on the next page, when he talks about Lo Tosifu, he brings a famous example at the beginning. He says, Kegon Chamesh Parashot B'Tfilin, Chamisha Minim B'Lulav. If a person, let's say, said, I want to bring a lemon in my arba minim. I want to wear. I love the parsha of I don't know, parshat my Bar Mitzvah parsha. I want to put it in my tefillin with it. Have a fifth box, right? Those are the examples of Lo Tosifu. And then in the next paragraph, please notice the Ramban adds Ulefi da'ati afilu bada la'asot mitzvah b'fnei atzma kigon she'asa chag b'chodesh shebadam libo ki rovam over belav. And then he goes on, Chemu b'Negillah, 180 נביאים עמדו להם לישראל, ולא פחתו ולא הוסיפו על מה שבתורה, אפילו עוד אחד חוץ מקרא מגילה. Meaning, the Ramban said, I'll tell you another example for Lo Tosifu, adding a holiday. Oops. That's not good for us, right? That's his example that he brings, Lo Tosifu. And then he said, even Purim was problematic. And the Gemara, he said, was aware of this problem and said that if not for the fact that they found a Zecher in the Torah to remind us, there's a source maybe a hidden source even, that Echshu connects to Purim, they wouldn't have done Purim either. So you see, say some poskim, and by the way, if you read through the literature that was written since 48 regarding this question, I forgot, I wanted to bring it, I forgot to bring it to my desk. There's a book of Professor Nachum Rockover, who's an older gentleman who was the Yoetz Mishpati L'Meshalah. He was a professor of Jewish law, and he put together many years ago a book called Hilchot Yom HaAtzmaut B'Yom Yerushalayim, which is a collection of articles of all the famous rabbis in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s that wrote about all these questions that we're discussing right now. And I would say a nice kind of piece of the book is dedicated to this question. Is there a halachic problem of adding a new day to the Jewish calendar? Is that really Baal Tosif? And this Ramban is quoted many times, and the idea of Purim, the president of Purim and Hanukkah, serve as some kind of example, whether or not you're allowed to do this. Yes, Rakashan.
Why do you think more worry about Megillah's kindness?
Oh, we'll get there in a second. That's also another concern that people bring up. Yes.
In Purim it says, "Kol asher yeruch." That's the opening for Chazal to make halachot and minhagim and everything.
Okay.
So what's the difference?
Counteracts. Listen, you're opening up a huge Pandora box.
I'm sorry.
No, meaning, does anyone have authority today? Who has authority today?
Anyhow,
Who has authority today? Kachosher Yerucha.
doesn't have to have authority, as the joke goes in America.
No.
The minhag, they come with no chumrah in Monsey, the Tesla in Brooklyn, and export it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, but the Yachinami, I would claim that it doesn't make me chayav. You're right, Yachinami. I would say the call, if you want to use, if you're already using a pasuk from the Torah that teaches us to listen to Chazal, then there's no Chazal today. There's only Zal. There's no Chazal, right? I mean, except the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch is the only Rishon that thinks that perhaps the rabbis of a generation have real authority. The majority of poskim of Rabbanim hold that rabbis don't have real authority today. Their authority stems from what the people accept, but not necessarily from their authority. Because we have no smicha, we have no real smicha, so we have no. They have no real authority for sure not to make the rabbanans. Sorry, not to make the rabbanans and mitzvot that like Hanukkah or Purim. But you see that even Hanukkah and Purim, the Gemara says, had to have some kind of source in the Torah, meaning the Ramban says, right? So this is one discussion that people bring. I can just throw to you some answers that people gave. Some people said that the Ramban is only talking, you see the language, Asher Badam Elibo, making up holiday. This is not making up, it's like Phil said. However, it's not that simple, because Purim, Yochiach, that it's not Badam Elibo. Some people argue it's only if you claim a day of Isri Malacha. You say you can't do Malacha, that's a Yom Tov. But on Yom HaAtzmaut, there's no Isri Malacha, no one's talking about that, that's not a problem. And then again, Purim, Yochiach. So these are the famous debates and questions that people go on. Rav Goren writes about this. Everyone writes about this. And they bring. I brought some of them. I'm not going to go into it right now. I brought some Gemaras and Rishonim to talk about this and discuss what exactly is Aser, what does the Ramban mean, and Bichlal, you should know some Rishonim disagree with the Ramban per se. So now you want to agree with the Ramban in this case. So this is part of the literature and discussion that were mentioned. As some gentlemen just mentioned now, Megillat Ta'anit is also an issue that was raised. The first book, the first written book after the Tanakh was a book called Megillat Ta'anit. It's a page and a half long. Obviously, since then, we put it out in a fat volume, like 150 pages, with commentary and what Megillat Ta'anit is really a very strange book. It's called a Megillah, a list of Ta'aniyot. No, that doesn't make any sense. Well, no, it's a Lashon Saginahor. It's the opposite. It's days that you're not allowed to fast. Okay, meaning after the Tanakh period, during the Hashmona'i period probably is developed, there were Chachamim, probably the Prushim, that probably the theories of the academics are that it was written mostly by the Hashmona'i influence to celebrate their victories. Many of the days that are listed, Yom Trianus, Yom Zeh, Yom Zeh, and different days of the year in which we celebrate certain victories of the Hashmona'i family. Amongst others in this list is mentioned Hanukkah and Purim are mentioned there, as well as Tu B'Av, of course, Pesach Sheni, other Jewish holidays. And really what's weird about this list is that what seems to be the main way of celebrating these days is by not fasting. By not fasting, which is weird because how do you commemorate something by not doing anything, right? It's a bit weird. So I once gave some classes on Glat Tani, don't ask why, and I read some stuff about this, and some people argue that this is a proof that Jews used to fast a lot. My father told me that my great grandmother in Europe used to fast every Monday and Thursday. It wasn't because there's no food. I don't know. Or because the Jews are very pious woman who really. But there was such a thing going back, and could be that the fact that we have to say, "Oh, this week you're not allowed to fast," shows that people would fast more than they wouldn't, right? So could very well be. Yom Kippur Katan, right? This is a list, and what happened later on was that the Gemaras scattered all over sometimes refer to those days and explain what happened in those days. So later on, someone wrote a Gemara on this Mishnah on Glat Ta'anit. So if you look at it today, it looks like a Gemara. You have like the day that something happened, and then like a whole discussion of what happened that day, but it's much later. This was added, and then you have Pirushim on the side. So Megillat Ta'anit, and then a woman called Vered, what was her name? Vered. She wrote a doctorate PhD on this, and she put it out beautifully. Like it's a huge book, Megillat Ta'anit. It's very funny because it's like a big, thick book, and it all started from one list of days. So the Gemara says that all the days of Megillat Ta'anit are batel, have been annulled, except Hanukkah and Purim. And the Gemara suggests that you're not allowed to add any more days to Megillat Ta'anit. Again, this started a discussion nowadays if that means that you can't add Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom Yerushalayim, etc. I should have brought it with me, again, I forgot, but Rav Straya Devlitsky, I don't know if you heard the name, he's a huge Talmid Chacham, huge, lived in Bnei Brak. He was some very important Sfarim, he's a Dayan, I think. He writes in that book. You have to read it just here, 2-3 pages, hardly bringing any sources, just saying, I don't understand you guys. You were all in the 6-day war, he talks. We were all about to be destroyed and killed. You all said Hallel the next day. Come on, I was there. I know you guys all said Hallel. So next year, that's it. You forgot about it. It's a very, very powerful kind of almost a muster that he's giving. Really wonderful. But as I said before, there is an interesting halachic background to this discussion. I don't think necessarily is a reason not to, but it is interesting to go through the different opinions. There's the famous Nitziv that everyone quotes, Nitziv Volozhin, in his Perush on the She'iltot, quotes a She'iltot from the Gaonim, who says that when events occur that are a miracle, you're supposed to say Hallel that year, but not necessarily the year afterwards. Again, people discuss and argue with this. I want to show you another important source. This is not going to all the ins and outs. I just want to present to you what is discussed and what are the questions. Believe me, if you want to go home now and read articles about this, you're more than welcome. I'm just trying to highlight what was discussed. To go back to the first page, you'll see another interesting source that people discuss, which is what we call Purim Katan. Is anyone here aware? Is anyone having their family the Purim Katan? Anyone?
Where is a
personal name that occurred to you that you celebrate in your family every year. Does anyone have this authority in their family? So I want to tell you that I read somewhere when I was reading about this I saw there was a description of a Purim Katan of a family that's my relative, and I was like very excited. My father's cousin is Dov Primer. People know Dov Primer, right? So his wife just passed away a month ago. Shelley, my father's first cousin.
I think it was CP one who wrote the song on this.
Yeah, that's playing for fame. There you go. It's very strange. He's not a musician. I mean, he as a kid, he used to play music in America, and he and his band, he wrote this niggun called Alani Siveal. So, but that, I mean, again, it's one of the most famous Jewish songs, and he was a kid that wrote it. And then his daughter told me that when they made Aliyah, she goes to God, and they teach Alani Sim in the morning, and the girl, she's like 5 years old, says, "Oh, I know that song. My father wrote that." So they called the parents and said, "Listen, you really should, it's nice that your daughter, thinks her Abba is everything, but you should teach her not to make up things." But he said, No, I actually wrote it. I actually did write it." Right, correct. That's right. So his father was in I think it was I think it was in Washington in the 70s. There was a terrorist attack. Mamash Mechabel. There was a Mechabel and killed people, and he was there, and he was under attack, and he was yeah.
Some of us lived it.
Yeah. You remember the story? You know the story? Okay, what year was it? I don't remember.
Probably late 70s.
Late 70s?
Early 70s, early 60s.
Okay, it was somewhere there.
Back on the next to the shop. I'm not sure where.
Yeah, downtown Washington.
Yeah, I've been on.
Right. So he was in an attack, and he from then on established a Purim Katan, and his family till today keeps it. But what is a Purim Katan? So if you go to Chaye Adam on the first source, he describes this idea personally about himself. V'chein anu osim al hanes shena'asa lanu b'shnat Tavkuf Tamich Dalet on Tet Zayin Kislev שהייתה הריגה בחצר שנידר בו מחמת הבעירה שיצא לו לעם. Mean pulver, whatever that means. That's a powder, what we call gunpowder, right? But it was an explosion. ונפלו כמה בתים בחצר וגם בית אחד שלי. My house fell down, and in my house, מחדר שהיו שם כל בני ביתי, my house where my whole family lived, נפל שתי חצי חומות בקורה אחת, the walls fell down, והחומה נפל על ביתי. Vitka. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sure how to pronounce that. Any good Yiddish name doesn't have like 3 vavs and 5 ayin is not a Yiddish name.
The siege took place from March 9th to March 11th, 1977.
Thank you.
It was a 3-day siege.
Thank you.
And there were 149 hostages. The neighborhood fell in down Washington, as well as the Islamic Center.
Right. עד שהיה כפסע ביני לבין המוות. לכן אשתי, my wife got hurt. Her mom, look how he described it. It's like, this is a book of halacha. He's like describing in great detail what happened to his family, to his daughter, to his wife. נשבור חלונות, והדלת, החומות, holes in the wall, and people were bleeding. והשם יתברך ברחמיו וחסדיו, חישב לנו הדם כקורבן לכפר, והצילנו ונשארנו גם בחיים. The Chaye Adam here describes the miracle that they all were saved. By the way, everyone knows, of course, the famous joke, right? Why did Chaye Adam call his book the Chaye Adam, right? Y'all know that joke. There's a good joke about this. He saw what happened to the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch wrote a book called Shulchan Aruch, and then someone came and said, it's very long. Let's make it short. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He said, if I call Chaye Adam, no one's going to write a Kitzur Chaye Adam. Right. Okay.
There were 2 people killed. One was a bystander, one was a police officer. And it also reminds me of my kids live in Oakland Park, Kansas. There was a terrorist attack by the JCC and the nursing home, and there were 3 people killed. All the people who were killed were non-Jews.
Well, so, I mean, it's obviously horrific. This
unfortunately, there's so many days that there could be these Purim Katan, because every day.
So this is a good question.
But
How would
that's
you-
separate for the families. We have a tradition that in Europe, towns who had a rescue or something had their own katan.
Yes, yeah, so here you go. So if you go down to the middle of the paragraph, you'll see that I highlighted in black. "ולמען ספר נפלאות השם כי דכתיב זכר עשה נפלאותיו, קבעתי עליי ועל זרי בנדר יום ועל זרי." He made it a day of commemoration for his generations, for his family and his zari. They should continue this day to do what? He said, by the way, he said, anyway, it's a day of chesed. It's Ayin Kislev, did you know that? Like he said, in his community, in many communities, it became a Yom HaTan for Chaver Kadisha. Today they do it on Zayin Adar. They did it there on Zayin Kislev for some reason. And he said to fast, Ubalayla Acharav, Yitzafu Yachdav, Ma'ariv, to Mariv, they should light candles, Kimo B'Yom Tov. They should say Shira Yuchud, Lo, V'Shira Kavod, and these Mirot. And then Tehillim, and you write down which, V'achil La'achot Seudah, make a meal for Lomdei Torah, L'Tetz Tzedakah, turning into a day. So this model of Purim Katan, and if you go, by the way, if you skip a little bit to the third page, the Maram Ashkar would ask this question about not just as a historical description that we just read now, but rather as a halakhic question. Can you establish Purim Katan? Look on the bottom, Tshuva, Vadai Yecholim Bnei Ha'ir L'taken B'nehem La'asot Takanot La'asot Askamot V'Gdarim. First, I said the cloud. Communities are allowed to make decrees and laws and rules and customs. And he brings the backing up for this from the Gemara and Bava Batra. And then he goes, if you skip like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, 7 lines, he says, "Umasim shtiknu Rabbanan bracha, afilu liachira we makom shetzad lo nes, v'chen yecholim anshe ir letaken al kol ha'ba'im acharem, ad sof kol hadorot, v'afilu shtiknu b'stam." Even if he didn't emphasize that it's for your children, it still includes them. And he says it's mamish a Kabbalah of the community that they take upon themselves to make this a day of Hodaya to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So the Pri Chodesh, next page, actually did not agree with him. I'm not, and again, this is I just get a little bit of a taste of what's going on in all these kind of literature. But if you look to the last two sources, you'll see that both the Chayei Adam and the Chatam Sofer again talk about this. Again, the Chayei Adam elsewhere gives out halacha like this. Mishira lo nes. Here's not just a story, but rather a halacha. Mishira lo nes. V'kol shekei b'nei ha'ir yecholim letaken b'askama alehem. They can make a decision on themselves and those after them. La'asot to yom Purim turned into a day of Purim. But I think I saw somewhere that in the beginning, some people suggested that we do Mishloach Mot and Yom Ha'atzmaut too. I think I saw that somewhere. That would be fun. Yeah.
All this is based on the Rambam.
That what?
Rambam already in the Mishnah Torah writes exactly word for word.
What? The Yom Purim?
Not Purim, but that's to make the holiday and you pass it on to your children and your family.
What? Yom Shnasal Lo Nes?
Okay, Yom Shalom.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not aware of that, but okay. I'm not aware of that. ונראה לי דאותה סעודה שעושים בשביל הנס, היא סעודת מצווה, meaning the idea that day you should make a סעודת mitzvah, automatically that making a meal that day is by definition a סעודת mitzvah.
But there's a very important distinction. We were talking about for Kol
Chomer, right?
This is allowing a community to celebrate. It would be crazy if they know you can't celebrate Eid free
Okay.
or more.
Look, you're obviously talking to converted, right? I'm just saying this. I want to show the source that people brought stuff forward
I
again.
make a distinction
That what?
right, between individual areas and personal relationship and what is for clothes.
So you're saying even more so we should do.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. And he quotes the local much without Pri Chodesh. That is not reshut, right? He mamash.
How can he say that a community doesn't mean that There are those who say the community cannot celebrate.
No, it's more, does it really oblige the next generation question? Or is it a really Sadat mitzvah or a shoot? The Pri Chalash says it's more optional. And the Chayei Adam says, no, it's a Sadat mitzvah. And it's what's the word I'm looking for? It obligates the next generation. So you see that there are already precedents in Jewish history to establish days of Hodaya on community nisim. So again, this was a very important source that people quoted regarding the question. And lastly, I want to come to the Chatam Sofer. And I'll tell you that, sorry,
What about
what did he do?
say
From the,
jacket?
I'm being taped, I should be very careful. I heard that Rav Hurtner after, I'm sure people heard no more than I do about this. I was told that he was a broken man afterwards. He was never the
Did
same.
he make us?
I don't know. I just know that he was, that Rav Hutner after he was hijacked and the whole story, I heard that he was never the same afterwards. People know more about this than I do, no? What?
The story, what's the
I
story?
don't know.
Rav Hutner in the 70s was on a plane. What was it? It was an El Al plane that was hijacked and taken to Jordan.
Yeah.
There were 2 or 3 planes. And at the time, the Moesid Gilei Torah got together and wanted to. There's a Tosfos in Gittin that says, in my book I wrote about this a little bit. That they got together and the Gemara said that you're not allowed to redeem a captive more than his worth.
Yeah.
The Mishnah Gittin,
Yeah.
because we don't want to put too much, burden on the community. So if it's asking for a certain amount, you can, but more than what's normal, you're not allowed to. However, Tosfot there says that for the Gadol Hador and the Chacham, there is no limit. There's no limit because Am Yisrael is dependent upon him. We redeem captive if it's Tam Chacham more than their worth. Okay, so some rabbis in America got together. Can you believe it? It's like unbelievable to think about this. And they were negotiating directly with Jordan to free Rav Hutner directly. And at the time, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky ruled against and said, this is not regular times, this is war. He said, this is a milchama, and in milchama, we don't apply the laws of redeeming captives the way we do in regular times, and you can't start playing these games, and he forbidden them from continuing this kind of idea. At the end, Israel did negotiate and freed the captives for whatever. There's a famous story that because they say that the Pachad Yitzchak and Shavuos that he wrote was on the plane, and that's why they had to rewrite Pachad and Shavuos because that was the only copy. That was the manuscript, and then, if I'm not mistaken, through back channels, I heard that they got it back. That's why I was told once that there are 2 versions of the Pachad kind of that. Is it urban legend or not? I'm not sure, but that's what I heard once.
Very Jewish.
Very Jewish. Yeah. Yeah.
He seemed pretty normal to me. I saw him laugh at that.
So I don't know. That's what I heard. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I heard that once, but maybe I'm wrong. I really don't know. So the Chatam Sofer. This Chatam Sofer has become probably after all that we discussed until now, the Ramban and the Miglat Ta'anit and the Chayei Adam. This Chatam Sofer is probably the most I can't say important, but very, very important source for our discussion. And you can't learn about anything about our question today without learning this Chatam Sofer that was written partially with Lag BaOmer.
Yeah.
And asking what it appears in 2 different places, asking what is this new Chag? Now, I don't know if you know, but there were people that used to burn clothes on a bonfire on Lag BaOmer. You ever heard about this? Yes, they used to take brand new clothes even, and it became like a really strange custom.
Marshmallows.
Yeah, but and the Chatam Sofer says it's Meshuggah, when you burning clothes, about Pashchit and give it to poor people. What is this? It's like Chukos HaGoyim. What is this kind of minhag? And I'm sure that if I ask you, right, you tell me, some people are a little bit older than me here. You probably, when you were kids, was Lag BaOmer a big thing?
No.
How many people came to Har Miron like in the 50s?
Lag BaOmer, you can do more things. That's all.
Right. So I have on my desk, actually, I was going, Rabbi Wine has a book on Masechet of Shas that he wrote many, many years ago. It's really a lovely 2-volume book. My father had it. I took it from him after his niftar, and I use it sometimes. So I just randomly this week, opened it, and there was an article there about the development of Lag BaOmer, and it starts it was written in late 1980s, this book, and he does almost a historical account of Lag BaOmer, and at the end he mentioned Rashbi, right? He proves that Lag BaOmer, Josephus mentions it already as a day that something occurred then, and that it was there. You can find 5 or 6 different reasons why Lag BaOmer was what it is. It's mentioned in the Rishonim as the day where keep started and stopped from dying. And then, if you're really into conspiracy theories, if you go on a few years ago, I don't know who it is, some guy put online on the Sfarm blog. He actually found the original source that he wants to prove that it's a printing mistake, this whole Lag BaOmer, because it said Yom Sameach Bo Rashbi. Yom Sameach Bo Rashbi, something about Rashbi was happy that day. And then in the next edition, that Sameach, someone added a little chipshik to the Sameach. So it came Yom Shemet Rashbi instead of Yom Sameach Rashbi. That one little, he claims, again, I don't have enough knowledge here to know but it's interesting theory that he said this was much later on developed and he became the Hula of Rashbi. I want to believe, going back to what I said last year, Am Yisrael, we celebrate things in our subconscious. We have a Ruach Nevuah, so I don't want to think that such a mistake came to us. To Am Yisrael, and I want to believe that when Am Yisrael do things, it reveals hidden ideas of what's supposed to be. This week I was giving a shir about this. There's a tshuva of the Chatam Sofer's grandson, I think, or son. You know that all the Chatam Sofer's children use the Sofer as so the Chatam Sofer, the Ketav Sofer. So you'll know better than I do, but his great grandson taught in JTS. So they used to call him the Toad Sofer. Anyway, but the Chatam Sofer's son, grandson wrote a tshuva about the following question. There's this is off topic, but there's a halacha that when you make an oath, you have to take a dvar mitzvah in your hand. You have to hold a mitzvah. So Sefer Torah, what Goyim do today, that they swear on a Bible, comes from us, right? Because the halacha is you have to swear on a dvar mitzvah, on a lulav, whatever. So even Sefer Torah. So he was asked whether or not you can use a Zohar. Can you swear on a Zohar? So he goes on he says the Zohar could not have been written by Rashi. You know the big argument, who wrote the Zohar? So he said, of course it can't be Rashi. Why not? He said because Shabtai Tzvi and Jacob Frank did terrible things in the name of mystics and Kabbalah and the Zohar. Rashi would have never let that happen. Right? It couldn't have been Rashi. It wouldn't have brought such terrible things to the Jewish people. So it can't be Rashi. It's a great writer, right? Anyway, so I want to think that when Am Yisrael see Lag BaOmer as connected to Rashi, there must be something there. But the Chatam Sofer came out against it, and said, you don't want to make up holidays like this, etc. However, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. The Chatam Sofer, however, does refer to our question about establishing new holidays, and he has a big chiddush. His chiddush is that establishing holidays for miracles is the oraita. He claims that Hanukkah and Purim have a biblical status to them. What does that mean? Obviously, it happened after the Torah was given, so they're Rabbanan, right? No one's saying that Mikra Megillah is oraita. But he says the obligation to celebrate a day for the events of Purim and Hanukkah, that's a biblical chiyuv. How we establish it, what we do exactly, what the details, how we celebrate, that's the Rabbanan. The rabbis decide, but the idea, and if you look inside, it says, he says, Vi'at Yom Moed, B'Yom Asiyat Nes, Hukal V'Chomer D'Oraita. Why? The Gemara in Pesachim says that when we say Shira and Hallel at Kriyat Yamsuf, and we celebrate Pesach, Uma me'avdut lecherut, mimita lechaim l'kol sheken. All due respect to Pesach, we weren't under the threat of being destroyed. It was hard times, and kids were being killed, and it was a terrible, terrible time. Slavery is terrible, and freedom is wonderful, but we weren't under a decree of being destroyed as a people. So, Purim, the Gemara said, we were about to be destroyed as a people, Kal Vachomer, that we have to celebrate and say Shira and make a Yom Tov. So the Chatam Sofer says this Kal Vachomer is the right to Kal Vachomer from Pesach. That is our precedent. That's our example that we must celebrate and thank Hakadosh Baruch Hu for miracles. So whenever great miracles happen, that we are saved from Mital Chaim, we have to make a Yom Tov. And says, look at the second line. To my humble opinion, Yom Purim v'Imei Chanukah d'Oraita. See that? Right? Achmala atot behem. What to do in there? Yishloach manot, ladlik nerot, lasot zecher zeh, make a mangal, make a barbecue. How much kazayis you have to eat of meat on the barbecue? That's Rabbanan. That's that we know. Va'over ve'ino oseh shum zecher d'Chanukah Purim over al mitzvah d'Oraita. Do you believe that? Mamish breaking a chiyuv d'Oraita. And so you see,
You want to put them on small?
so 100%, meaning after all the reasons why we said maybe there's problem making a matzmot, here is a very powerful idea that establishing ideas.
Says Shum Zecher. So I mean, it's like if you don't celebrate Hanukkah at all. Then that's all over the right.
Yeah, right.
The whether you like hairs or not, that's to be dramatic.
Right. So I'm saying this became a very important source in the halakhic literature to argue that it's not just a nice thing, a cute thing to make up a day for Yom Ha'atzmaut, but rather it's a mitzvah d'oraita, chovah d'oraita, avakarat hatov, avodah Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
You need Malchus for that? You don't do it.
That's a little bit part. I don't know how that works, but that's why after all was said and done, this is a very, very important source. Finally, I want to end today's shir with one last idea. And this is like, I don't know where I'm going with this, so you can help me out. You know, why are we in Avelut right now? It's a very strange Avelut. I have to say. You know, for the Beis HaMikdash, you have 3 weeks of Avelut. The Churban Beis HaMikdash. And the longest Avelut that we have is 33 days. The Lag BaOmer. You know, last week when I asked why were people against having Yom HaShoah, they said Nisan. Well, they had no problem making our Akiva students mourning on Nisan. Where were all of those people then? Right? The longest mourning that And we're not even sure why. We're not even sure what we're like. It's not like, like for Churban Beit HaMikdash, we have Nevi'im and telling us about what happened and Chazal. Oh, we're not even sure. No one knows exactly why we're keeping these laws of Avelut right now. It's very vague. It's not strange. It's a little bit strange, Now, the theories, you all know the theories. The theories, it does say in the Gemara that Rabbi Akiva's students died these days, and 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died these days. And as I mentioned last week, the Crusades in the 12th century, in the 13th century, in the 12th century, occurred during these days. And as a result, these days became even more in kind of the intensity of these days became more because of the Crusades. As people proved in the Sephardic community, they became a little bit more or less restricted because it didn't affect the Sephardic communities. In the Ashkenazi communities, the Crusades, the memory of the Crusades added, but it's still a little bit big. Now let's go back to Rabbi Akiva's student. Rabbi Akiva's students died. Now, this also is very strange because is there any other example in Jewish history that we commemorate days to remember people that died?
Yeah, that's true.
As a people, as a nation, as a national day?
Shom Gedalia.
So Shom Gedalia is my best example why it's not true. Because if that would be true, that would have to be that there's one person in Jewish history, only one person. The greatest person in Jewish history is Gedalia. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, not Rabbi Akiva, not the Rambam. I mean, let's go on. Should we go on listing people? Avraham Avinu. I mean, there is no one. David Melech. No, it's Gedalia. He's the only one. He deserves his own day. I mean, I think it's obvious. My father used to have this yeshivish joke about 3 reasons why you shouldn't fast on Gedalia. Something like if he would be alive, if he wouldn't have been killed, he would be dead by now. When he fast for you fast for me. People always make these jokes but the truth, Gedalia is a very strange day. So everyone knows that the real idea of Tzom Gedalia was the end of the Churban Bayit Rishon. Because in Bayit Rishon, we commemorate the loss of the Beis HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av, and yet after the Churban, there were still Jewish presence here in the country, even to some extent, some Jewish sovereignty. Tzom Gedalia, as we know, you can talk about the Milchemet Achim, right? If you read the story, the Jews, the few Jews that stayed there after the Churban couldn't get together, couldn't live together. They were fighting about some judicial system out of it. They were demonstrating against each other. It was a balagan, and there was a murder and the Churban. I can't see any other to explain Tzom Gedalia. Now, and the best proof is that Tzom Gedalia is part of, like we said before, of a group of ta'aniyot, right? It's a chronological process from Asra B'Tevet. 2.5 years later, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, or Tish'a B'Tammuz according to the Navi, Tisha B'Av, and then Tzom Gedalia. The process of the Churban Beit HaMikdash begins Asar B'Tevet and ends finally at Tzom Gedalia. That's the only way I can understand it. Now, if that's true, and I think it is, let's understand the parallel model to that. Bayit Sheni. Bayit Sheni was also destroyed on Tisha B'Av. But if we want to really compare Bayit Rishon to Bayit Sheni Churban, what do we have to do? We have to commemorate the loss of sovereignty as well. Now we know that after Churban HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash, we know that there was life went on here pretty good. Not pretty. I'm not saying good. I learned in Hebrew University by Professor. I remember Professor Schwartz talking about it. Dan Schwartz is a big professor, and he spoke about it. I think it was him who said that historians still today, when they divide history into parts, right? Rishonim, Achronim, Bayit Rishon, Bayit Sheni, Bimei Ben Abinayim, all how we divide. He said that the period of Beit Sheni doesn't end historically in the year that we think it would, which is 70, but rather in Bered Bar Kochva, 133 after the Common Era. Why? Because for 60 somehow years after the Churban, there was still Jewish presence here. And the fact is that they succeeded in uprising. Meaning you can't make an uprising against the Romans if there's no one here. What really ended Beit Sheni? The Bar Kochva rebellion, which succeeded for 2 years. How do we know? From the coins. From the coins. You know, I once had an operation years ago by some surgeon, and everyone was waiting for him hours outside the door to meet with him. I go in, and he goes, he sees I have a kippah on my head. He said, "What do I do?" I said, "I'm a teacher." He said, "Okay." And he takes out his pocket all these Bar Kochva coins. I'm a collector, and I'm plotting. Everyone's waiting outside. He's like, "Can you help me read them? Ancient Hebrew." And I start discussing, like, I'm here to see about an operation. I'm not going to do that because he's supposed to operate him. So I had to be nice to him, right? But like for half an hour, he just talking, shooting to me about his coin collection of Bar Kochva. But we know from the Bar Kochva coins that we have there that there was independence and sovereignty for 2 years. When the Bar Kochva rebellion was crushed, that was the end of Jewish sovereignty till recently. So could it be that the Rabbi Akiva students, and we know that Rabbi Akiva was the flag bearer, right, of Bar Kochva. That you know in the Gemara, he supported Bar Kochva passionately. He believed in it. Could it be that Bar Kochva's students, Rabbi Akiva students, Bar Kochva soldiers, were Rabbi Akiva soldiers? And when we say that we're going to commemorate the death of Rabbi Akiva students, it's not, like I said before, the death of people, because we don't do that in Judaism, but rather the loss of Jewish sovereignty of Beit Sheni, parallel to the separation that we have of Beit Rishon, between Tisha B'Av and Tzom Gedalia. We have the separation between Pesach, between the Tisha B'Av of Beit Sheni and Rabbi Akiva. Now, more than that. How did Bar Kochva, how did Gedalia die? How was he killed? Because of Jewish politics. What do we say about Rabbi Akiva students? Why did they die? Shelo nahagu kavod ze b'av. You see the parallel? Yeah. You see that in both defeats, Chazal tell us, the Tanakh tells us, it's not because of the goyim.
Moral disaster.
It's us. It's what we do to ourselves. In both pharaohs, both times that we lost Jewish sovereignty, by Rishon and Beit Sheni, Chazal are telling us it's you, it's us. We did it to ourselves. Well, I don't want to talk more than that. Cut the show. Sure. But I'm just saying that's what Chazal are telling us.
Well, that's the classic response to tragedy throughout all of our generations. We internalize it. We never externalize it. We're never the victim,
right?
Like other ethnic groups.
I don't want to say more. I think people can take it themselves. But what I want to say is now here, where it all comes together. If what I'm saying is true, and I admit this is very theoretical. I have no real proof of this. It's not my. I read this somewhere else from other people. People wrote about this. I didn't make this up. People spoke about the different. You can read about this. It's floating around. These ideas are floating around for many years. But where it all comes together is the coincidence. The same days that we commemorate the loss of Jewish sovereignty for the last time just happen to be the days that we celebrate the reestablishment of Jewish sovereignty after 2000. And it's a Ma'agal, right? Yom Ha'atzmaut falls within the days of Avilut for the loss of the Akiva students, for the failure of the Bar Kochva rebellion, for the loss of Jewish sovereignty, falls exactly in the period of the year which Am Yisrael have returned to their land and established sovereignty. Is that not fitting? Even more, that these are the days that we should celebrate our independence and Jewish sovereignty. So that's an idea that I'm throwing to you. The Idah deals more. Thank you very much. Yeah, look at that, comments and questions.
Just to highlight what the Chassam Sofer said. I don't know, maybe did I mention to you last week? But apparently the Sfat Emet wrote that Keneged So some are going,
Yes, yes. Someone mentioned this last week. Yeah.
I mentioned it
Yeah,
last week,
yeah.
yeah. So the fact is that if you connect Yom HaAtzmaut has to be